Okay, so one of the big important things that you're going to be asked to do on the FSA test is to respond to text in writing. Many times we're used to answering questions on big tests by clicking, filling in the bubbles, A, B, C, or D, sometimes true or false, sometimes even writing in short words. But now in third grade, it starts a respond to text type of question. Let me show you what that looks like. This one says, why does Mr. Foos want to learn to read? This is the part you need to pay attention to. Well, actually, support your answer with evidence from the story. That's something that I don't know that third graders are used to. So that's why we're doing little lessons and videos to work on that, because that is kind of tricky. So first, answering in sentences, because I've not done that on tests before, and then second, finding evidence for my answer. So that's the reason we have this lesson. First step is to read the questions. That was always a trick my teachers taught me. Go to the end of the test, go to the end of the story, and read the question first. So one more time. Why does Mr. Foos want to learn to read? Okay, and as I'm going through, same as if I was really taking a test, I'm going to underline stuff. I want you to do that if you have the paper in front of you. Underline it. If you're taking the test in class, you're allowed to mark on it. Okay, the story is called Reggie the Reader. Reggie was the best reader that just about anybody knew. Reggie was taught by his teacher. That is important to know how to read so that a person would grow up to be smart. That it is important. Everybody should know a lot about the world around them, Mrs. Roberts said. Reggie would read and read anything and everything, books, magazines, comics, and newspapers. When Reggie got some baseball cards, he'd read the stats on the back, so he knew all about the best players. When his mother put salad dressing on the dinner table, Reggie would read the ingredients on the label. And when Reggie went out with his father on a drive through town, he would read the names of all the stores on Main Street, so he would know how to get to them. Reggie read so much that he became the fastest reader in the school, winning a little trophy after a reading race. Reggie even helped his classmates become better readers, getting together with them in the school's library at the end of the day in class. It was during one of those fun sessions with his classmates at the school's library that Reggie noticed something strange. He went to a special bookshelf that always had 5 of his favorite books on it. Reggie noticed that they were all gone. He thought maybe they were checked out. He asked the librarian, Mrs. Sinkway, and she told Reggie that the books had not been checked out. Reggie looked around the library, but nobody besides his friends were there, and he knew they didn't have the books. Reggie investigated. He went back to the bookshelf and looked very closely at it, paying attention to the spots where the librarian always placed his 5 favorite books. Suddenly, he found a note on a piece of paper in an empty place on the shelf. Reggie read the note and yelped loudly, "Aha!" That didn't please Mrs. Sinkway. She rushed over with an angry look on her face and reminded Reggie that the library is a quiet zone. He was not supposed to be disturbing other readers. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Sinkway," Reggie said. I know better than just about anybody that the library is a quiet zone, but I couldn't hold back my excitement at the note I found." Reggie handed it to her and she read it out loud. "You'll find the books on the darkest floor of the building in the hands of somebody everyone ignores." "It's unsigned," said Mrs. Sinkway. "I know," said Reggie. "I'm not sure who wrote the letter, but I think I know where the books are." Reggie led Mrs. Sinkway into the basement. There, in his dimly lit office, reading the children's books from the library, was the custodian, Mr. Foos. I always wanted to learn to read, so I'm paying attention now because the question asks about Mr. Foos, and it asks about evidence about why he wants to learn to read. Mr. Foos was forced to admit, I clean for all the students and teachers. Everyone always ignores me though, so I'm trying to teach myself. I never thought anyone would want to help me. I saw Reggie reading these books all the time, and he's so good at it. I thought these would be the best books to start with. I'll help you, Mr. Foos, offered Reggie. You can join my reading group after school. Thank you, Reggie, said Mr. Foos. I'll be there tomorrow. The next day, at the after-school reading group that Reggie ran, his friend Audrey, Mr. Foos' niece, admitted to writing the letter. She knew her uncle was a good man even though he was stealing the books. He just wanted to learn to read. Audrey left the note there, knowing that Reggie would help Mr. Foos because Reggie was a good reader and also a good young boy. Okay, so I only underlined one part, but I'm glad I did because it's going to make me go back and only reread this paragraph. If I didn't underline it, then I'd have to scan this whole story trying to find where the answer might be. Why does Mr. Foos want to learn to read? It's somewhere up here. It says, I always want to learn to read. Mr. Foos was forced to admit, I clean for all the students. Everyone always ignores me, so I think that's part of it. He feels a little bit lonely, so I'm trying to teach myself. I never thought anyone would want to help me. I saw Reggie reading the books, so I thought, books all the time, and he's so good at it, I thought these would be good ones to start with. So I think it has to do with him being alone and being ignored. So that's where I'm going to go in my answer. When you write your answer, you have to restate the question. So you would borrow words from the question. I'm borrowing Mr. and Foos. Let's see here. Mr. Foos wanted to learn to read. I'm borrowing all of those words because then I'm restating the question. Mr. Foos wanted to learn to read because. You're explaining, it said why, so you need to use the word because. He felt ignored. Now, some kids would leave the answer at that, one sentence. But if you only leave one sentence, then you're likely to get 1 point. And let's pretend this is scored with 3 points. You want to get all 3 points. So you want to elaborate. You want to talk a little bit more about what you read. He wanted, I have a good one. To read like Reggie. To read like Reggie. He saw Reggie reading the same 5 books every day and figured they were very good. That is why he started practicing with those 5 books. Okay, so I've put the obvious answer, which was people were ignoring him, and that's the best one I've got. But then he saw Reggie reading the same 5 books, or he wanted to read like Reggie, which is the truth. He would see Reggie reading those books, and then he figured they were good. So I've taken a 1-sentence answer, and I've multiplied it. I've turned it into 2, 3, 4 sentences. I believe that I'm very likely to get all the points if this was really the FSA. Like I've told my stepdaughter, Allie, you are not going to get points taken off for writing too much information from the story. I've got the information about the 5 books. I've got the information about Reggie always reading those 5 books. And I've got the information about how he's feeling ignored. I pulled all of that evidence from the story. And they're only going to give me more points because I pulled more evidence. All right, so I hope that helps.